this question is it bad to do threshold work at 105%? So this is why I emphasize and lean so heavily on rate of perceived effort for people that I coach, and using that in line with a power meter, and the importance of learning to feel your threshold, as opposed to just being very locked into a specific number, because that number can vary quite a bit each day. So if we define threshold or FTP as this inflection point where above which the rate at which you fatigue goes up much more quickly, and below this inflection point, your FTP, you can ride hard for a very long time. So that's what that number is. And as you get more experience and you ride more and you do this for longer, you should be able to feel that inflection point, this intensity at which you can ride hard for a long time. But if you go a tiny bit above it, you start to fatigue much more quickly. So that is the best way to feel your threshold. It's also where usually somewhere right around our second ventilatory threshold, where there's a meaningful change in your breathing. You kind of go from heavy but controlled breathing into more kind of ragged, gasping breathing. So those are some cues to kind of be able to feel your threshold. And the reason why it's so important to feel your threshold is that, like I said, it can vary significantly day to day, probably more so for a less experienced athlete who maybe isn't as tuned in to certain sensations, maybe isn't as kind of routine with eating, hydration, sleep, kind of all those boxes that kind of contribute to real consistency and sensations in training. But that being said, your threshold can vary probably by potentially 5% or more day to day, just based on fatigue, hydration, temperature, those kinds of things. And so, if the question is, it's like if your threshold is potentially at 105% of the value that's inputted, in Training Peaks or whatever software you're using, then at that point, no, it's great. You're just riding at what is accurately threshold for you on that day. But if you're so locked into that number, then you're going to, yes, have this concern that you're riding at this higher percentage. So backing up, if your question is it bad to do threshold work over threshold? That's kind of a different question, a different angle. And so the answer there really is just, it depends. It depends on the nature of the workout, kind of where you are in your season, where you are relative to racing or especially key races, how fatigued you are, what the energy cost is in overshooting this workout. Kind of, some people tend to pay a really high price by, adding intensity to workouts, and some people tend to absorb that pretty well. So that's something that you kind of need to know about yourself. And then also just kind of recognizing how, based on how you respond to additional intensity, what are the subsequent workouts and how might that impact some subsequent workouts? So if the question is it bad to do threshold work over threshold? It really depends. That's a pretty nebulous answer and kind of depends much more on the larger context of where you're at. If the question is it possible that my threshold is 5% higher on any given day? Yeah, those are the best days. Those are the days we kind of want in training, when you feel good and you can overshoot the numbers, but the sensations are in line with the goal. So as always, nothing is straightforward with training, and but you have a roadmap of a few different answers.